Welcome to B.A.D, Boston Artists and Designers Podcast. I'm Calder.
And I'm John.
And today we have a very special guest, Jack. I don't know what your last name is. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Starting
it's
off
fine.
great.
It's wonderful. So Sieber Marola, it's hyphenated. Assyrian and Italian. So I'm just like a Mediterranean, just fucking
Very nice.
blended up. But yeah.
All right, so introduce yourself to John and I and our listeners.
All right. So hi everyone, my name is Jack Sieber Marola. I go by Rudejackart on pretty much all my platforms. And I graduated from Mass Art in animation. And I've been a freelance animator, storyboarder, illustrator, with comics being like my first love. I've dabbled into that. So, and these are all things that I still actively do and try to do for either freelance work or personal projects. And that's who I am. Yep.
Very cool. When did you graduate?
So I graduated in 2019, to which I will always feel immense guilt for all my underclassmen friends who are going through, COVID and school anywhere, but especially like Mass Art, because I'm immediately going to start this podcast like bashing like my school, but I'm just like
No,
the
don't
fact
worry.
that like you don't have access to stuff and the tuition and I don't know, it's a whole thing. But yeah, 2019. To answer your base question, you'll find I ramble a lot, but yeah,
That's what we're here for. Yeah, John and I are both 2020, so everyone from 2020 and up is kind of a...
As soon as you said the underclassmen, I was like, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
That's good.
We've moved on. We're not
We've
thinking
moved on.
about it. It's going to be suppressed. And then when
Doesn't
we're 40,
exist.
we'll be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, quick question for you.
Sure.
Rude Jack. What's with the rude at the front of the? What's that title name start?
So it's funny because it's like one hand kind of washes the other, because I don't know, like you would have to tell me what your impression of my art is, but the trade secret as to why it's Rude Jack is actually all thanks to my amazing brother. He's 13 years older than me, and he basically got to call all the shots growing up. So, he used to be like, hey, Jack, cool kids catch Frisbees in their mouth. And I'd be like, whoa, really? And like, just shit like that, which is probably inexcusable because he was like old enough to be like my uncle or whatever. But anyway, he went by Rude Boy as his gamer tag on like everything, like Halo 1, all that.
Yeah.
And we had a joint Xbox account briefly, where it was like Rude Jack, like 007, I think he put it in, which was, cringy. But, and then in high school, as like a graduation present, not the same website I use now, but I think he got me like a Squarespace, and he just like labeled it Rudejackart. I never had a choice in the matter. And and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, I'm definitely brutally honest. But yeah, if I had like, $1 for every time someone's like, oh, you're actually pretty nice and approachable, it's like, yeah, haha, funny. Yeah, and so yeah, that's where the rude comes from.
Gotcha.
And my mystique is all gone now. So thank you.
No, it's a very cool name.
Did you always know that you wanted to be an artist, or was there a point along the way that
Great
Yeah.
delivery.
So no, it's no, I was like, I mean, I'm gonna be self-deprecating. I was kind of a dumb kid in the sense that like I didn't realize how the world worked, but I mean, I guess that's every kid.
Yeah, blissful ignorance.
And yeah, like, because I remember when I was like 5, I distinctly remember this, like in either K1 or first grade, I don't even remember, but well, I just said I distinctly remember. Anyway, our teacher gave us like all like the sheets where it's like, like at a blank space for drawing, and it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I didn't realize how life worked, and for some reason, like, you get that feeling of like, oh crap, somehow I messed this up while everyone was like sharing in front of you. Because like my friend was like, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, and I was like, oh, fuck this up, because I had to stand up there and I was like, I want to be a horse when I grow up, because I thought you could just become anything. Like, the rules weren't explained to me. Like, and I felt like a freaking idiot.
That'd be
But
sick.
yeah, anyways. Yeah, no, I was like, oh, I could be anything you want when you grow up, because that's what they all
That's
teach
what
you.
they, that's what
and
they
it's
said. Those are the instructions.
clearly, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I was destined to be an artist because I fucking didn't get the concept and had to go the other way. But I just drew on everything, and you know, I got in trouble for drawing. It was my escape. I did everything through there, and you know, not to give too much of a long-winded answer, but it does inform a lot of how I look at life and professionalism and what you do. When I was 12, I was suddenly rushed to the hospital, and they thought it was just appendicitis, but it turns out it was Crohn's disease. But it like had infected my appendix, and like it just, details spared, really put a lot into, you know, perspective, because, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and claim that I'm like the most mature person, but it's like there's maturity in like what really matters, and then there's like how you act half the time. And I'm a silly freaking idiot who like, you know, likes to draw cartoons and like play video games, and you know, it's like, yeah, I don't take it that seriously, but that was kind of the first moment where it's like you kind of have to grow up a little faster when you get diagnosed with something chronic, because you realize like how much you take things for granted. And what would normally, again, propel someone probably to be like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor now, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to just keep drawing dumb cartoons, like, and double down on it. So, I mean, it and then I realized, because my dad had always, like, he's the one who I really have to thank. He shared, like, such a broad spectrum of art, film, everything with me. He grew up on, like, Marvel Comics. That was his thing. And he introduced a lot of that to me. And it wasn't until, again, around that age where another thing, like, another epiphany, like the horse one, stupidly, where I was like, oh, people are making these. These aren't just, like, gifts, like, from, you know, the heavens. It's like, no, like, human beings go into this as a career. And I just kept drawing, and I just kept drawing. And, yeah, I'm not sure if there's another question down the road that asks about mass art specifically. I kind of, oh yeah, because you're about to ask, like, yeah, what was your education like? That's one of the questions. I can get to that with my road into that, but yeah, there's a quote by Rob Schrab, who's one of my favorite, like, independent, like, comic artist creators. He, like, now he has co-written on some of Rick and Morty. He wrote an autobiography just called "But I Can't Do Anything Else," and I think that really speaks to me. Like, I didn't even read the autobiography, so fake fan, but just the title alone got to me, because it's like, yeah, it's just, this is just what I'd be doing, like, if money wasn't even involved. Because I just do it. You just do it. So yeah,
that epiphany moment that you talked about, where you're like, oh yeah, people do this isn't just like a thing that is broadcast, like, on its own, and someone has to design everything. Like, I had that realization with everything around us other than nature, you know, like, and then it's like, okay, so I can design that and industrial design / architecture. So yeah, let's move forward into what your education has been like. I guess, like, I'm curious, like, you mentioned you got in trouble for drawing. I'm sure both of us, all three of us did. I know I did. What was high school like? Did you get into art classes, and then how'd you get to mass art?
So, my journey into mass art, so I grew up in a town called Barrington, Rhode Island, and for those who know it, it is a very nice town. It is a very safe town, and it's a town that you very much take for granted. You know, I grew up kind of more blue collar, but a lot of the town was, like, very rich, very safe, like, you know, blue bloods. The only reference to the place that, like, people knew was there's an episode of Family Guy where they go to a golf country club, and that's the country club in my town. And I hated that was the only way I could, like, tell people.
Oh, it's better than Family Guy's digs on Bridgeport, though.
Right. No. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Rhode Island, just and all that with Seth MacFarlane. But anyway, so I went to this school that at the time, I don't know if this was still the case, and you don't know it because it's what you're used to. It's the environment you grew up in. Right. But it was the number one high school in the state, public school. And our workload, I do have to admit, was like pretty high. It was like 12-page papers were like the norm. It was like, wow. we had like, I know this is like a place of privilege, and it's like, I'll get to like the later epiphany, but I was like a C student at best. It's like, because you grow up in this system where it's like one size fits all, and this proves whether or not you are smart, you are this, you are that. Logically, I flourished in writing. I liked history. I definitely had an interest in science, but once science hit math, basically everything math, other than geometry,
that's where it hits.
Which is really interesting because, what I'm sure with like you two with industrial design, you might find that geometry actually came a little easier because I think that part of the brain, at least for me, like that made more sense because that was shapes, that was composition, that was what I do.
It was visual math.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but the more abstract stuff, like I never got to trigonometry, I never got to calculus.
Algebra was hard for me.
That stuff. Even algebra, yes. Yeah. Like, I was like, I mean, it's this kind of boomer joke I've seen on Facebook, but it's true, where it's like, I was good at math until they added letters into it, or like the alphabet. And it's just like, yeah, that's how I feel. But yeah, so basically, yeah, I was always drawing, and I was always observing, and I kind of just always did that on my own time. And I did take a few art classes. I had a great art teacher who let me stay after just to like screw with like Illustrator and like Photoshop like after school. I like willingly hung out because I didn't have this stuff at home.
I was part of that crowd too.
Yeah, like, and she was like, "Don't you want to like leave or whatever?" I'm like, "No, I want to freaking mooch." But anyway, like, and because also college was very much in that environment, you were just expected to do that. Like, I was never sat down and given the conversation of like, hey, you want to take a gap year, you don't have to go to school, you could go into this. It was just, maybe this is just a very like American thing.
Yeah.
But it's like you're just expected to go to college. Like there's no way around it. And so again, painting this picture, huge workload. You don't think you're that smart. You don't think you're that good. You're kind of a goofball. You just like retreat inside yourself and you draw all the time. Although I did love a lot of my teachers. I had really good conversations with them, but it was just, like basically I applied to Mass Art and I didn't get in because they were like, oh, your GPA is too low. Which again, like ridiculous, right? Just because like to the greater span of like, hey, we're a real school, they need to prove like, that the students they're taking in are of a certain caliber. Like I'm not trying to bash.
It's funny because Mass Art doesn't even have a GPA.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And it's like, what are letter grades? Like, what is this? And so that's exactly what happened. So they were like, they pretty much were just like, you're not the caliber, you're not the pedigree we want. And so their ultimatum was, take a year of community college. If you get a B average, then we'll let you in. It was, And so I went to Bunker Hill, which is like on the other side of Boston, and the community college, obviously, not the battle. And and this is the moment where, like, the weirdest thing happened, and I'm not bragging, I'm just telling what happened. What I had taken for granted in the workload that was stressing me the hell out, probably added a lot to undiagnosed OCD and anxiety and all that other crap that, through high school. Once I got to Bunker Hill, I somehow just got on the dean's list, and I wasn't even trying, but it was like I was acing everything. And I was like, oh, so that's when it like was like, oh my God, like I'm grateful because of my high school experience for like beating me down so much with all this work, but by comparison to Bunker Hill, it was like nothing. But at the same time, like I'm very grateful for that perspective because once I got in to Mass Art, like I had that moment of like, what, like, you know, just, this is so weird, this hoop I had to go through, when you really think about it. Like, we were all just laughing about it a second ago. Like, just, it was just absurd. And yeah, so I got in there, and again, I was always teaching myself illustration, and I learned from like looking at comics and looking at, like, I would just observe. I never had any formal training, or really took many classes. I took like 1 or 2 classes. But yeah, so when I got there, and I really like, I'm very grateful, because I think a lot of people, again, go from high school to college because that's what they've been bred into, where they think by the end of it, they're just going to get like that piece of paper that allows them to be successful and get any job in the industry, and like it's not going to be work. And that's something that I don't blame a lot of people for. It's because they don't get that chance to like get a perspective. And so what I realized was like I could go into illustration, and again, this isn't like an ego thing or arrogance, but it was like, I've gotten this far teaching myself to draw. I'll only probably hopefully improve this way. But if I'm going to spend all this money to go to school, I might as well maybe take a major that's backwards compatible, or I could always apply those skills to something else. So animation was the perfect fit, because comics, you know, what's one step beyond a comic? It's like a storyboard, then animation. It's just, it's everything. And so that ultimately affected my choice to go into mass art. And I think it's because I had that year at Bunker Hill, despite the circumstances being weird, and applying that kind of life perspective was, I realized that like no one's going to kind of do it for you. And now speaking more into the mass art experience that I had personally, because I think that's what you're asking as well, right? Like, what was the actual experience of mass art like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, because it's like, it's kind of weird, because it's like, yeah, like no classes I took taught me like how to really like perfect drawing. They gave me the tools to learn the application. So if, in my experience, at least speaking on the animation department, which I had a lot of great connections, great teachers, and great friends. However, with the curriculum, one thing I will say is like, if you don't go in there already as some sort of like self-driven, like almost auteur, or like you have a distinct vision, like you don't like if you already have like a skill set or a tool set you just want to pursue, and you just want to be left alone to do your own thing as a director, that's what Mass Arts animation program excels at. What it didn't really do for me, and I feel like a lot of people, was like, if you want to work like at school on an experience that would be similar to job experience, as in like seeing what it's actually like to be part of a team and work under people, they don't do that. It's like you are self-driving everything. So if you're not the type of person who can like really direct and come up with stories, come up with ideas, and come up with things for yourself, like you're gonna have a trickier time. So yeah, that was my educational experience. And I guess just going back to like the perspective I had in life from my upbringing, my struggles in school, and my medical things, I just kind of realized like, okay, I'm gonna tailor this as much as I can to what I can do. And thankfully it did pay off, I think, for me, but I think a lot of people in the department might have not had the best time. But yeah, overall, I'm still very happy I went to Mass Art, and I would recommend it. I think at this time, though, in the pandemic, you know, you're just getting ripped off, man. Like, I'm just sorry. Like,
yeah,
just
there's a lot of people
it.
that are not going to college because of all this.
Honestly, yeah. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think the common joke at the beginning of the pandemic, with the way it was kind of being treated, or like, it's kind of like YouTube University. You know,
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that. At least I thought that was. You need to have structure to a certain extent. That's what college is really for. Otherwise, you can teach everything yourself on YouTube. If you're incredibly self-driven and can be incredibly disciplined,
absolutely,
you can learn it all on YouTube. But you also get the network from colleges and friends, and
I would argue that's probably the core reason to go to at least at like an art school. I don't know, like it's like, you know, you feel like you're walking on eggshells a little bit, but I'm just like, honestly, I think the connections I made were far more valuable than the money I realistically spent. Like, when I really think about like to. How much or equal to, and like how much did I like semesters worth take away to apply to what I actually do now, it might be like 3 or 4 classes, like, honestly, like realistically for me.
Yeah,
like, and I know I do not mean to sound ungrateful.
When you mention like it's kind of rare for colleges to truly prepare you for what the work environment's going to be like, because when in a college they give you a project and it's all hyper tracked, like it's going to go a lot faster than anything does in business or in professional environment. And getting into industrial design, I was on Photoshop for like weeks. That's all I did was Photoshop work. I didn't do any like prototyping or anything like that. And they don't quite prepare you for that, but they touch on every little detail that you're going to do to get you prepared for an idea, but it's not the everyday nitty gritty, which is good and bad.
No, it's like I completely understand why the curriculum is the way it is.
I kind of wish that the curriculum for each of the majors, like they would start you off. Well, I think it naturally did come this way. Like as you become a senior, you start to learn the things that you're good at. Or your strengths and your weaknesses naturally, and maybe some of your teachers will point that out. But I think it'd be kind of interesting if they, I think did it a little bit more on that. I think like at the beginning, obviously you got to learn all these general stuff, but I noticed that by the end of my senior year, I was still kind of like I started to get a grasp on who I was as a designer and some of my strengths and weaknesses. But I was still kind of searching around, be like, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, and I kind of wish a teacher was like, John, I think this is it for you. I think you should check out this route, you know. And it's only till after college where that starts to hone in a little bit. So I think that's something that I think they wish they narrowed down into.
So it sounds like a similar thing, possibly across the board, because I have friends in like communication design, as it's known now, and other majors, and it's like. Like again, it's kind of what I'm saying. Like a little too late. Like when you figure it out, it's like, okay, they're giving you this broad spectrum, but it's like unless, like you need to know what you want to do, or like you can't tailor it. Like you're just going to be kind of directionless, and then you're like thrown to the wolves, and you know. I am not making my school sound good. I did have a good time.
No, I mean, we've had plenty of conversations. We've interviewed a lot of Mass Art people because that's our biggest network, obviously. But that's kind of the point. It's, you know, that was my biggest realization coming out of college is, wow, I got the network. The job I have now is because of the network I got from Mass Art. The friends that I have
all
now.
jobs I've had.
Mass Art. And that's really what you're paying for at any college. I mean, you could argue with art schools, you could go to YouTube University, but that's another thing. It's really, you know, the friendships and the network. And it was interesting to hear where you grew up, because I also grew up in a fairly well-off New England neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure my high school is one of the best in the town, at least, if not the state. And the opportunities they give you, I was able to tailor my last 2 years to art, because I knew I didn't want to go to anything other than design of some kind. So it was kind of on the opposite end with curriculum, because I was able to get my GPA to like 4.0 because I did nothing but the classes I liked: art, applied mechanics, CAD modeling. And then Mass Art didn't look at my SAT scores. Thankfully, thank God they didn't have to look at my SAT scores.
You lucky bastard.
Yeah. But it's really nice to hear that they were like, here's another route to get in if you go to community college, and then you aced it. So,
well, I think, Jackie, you highlight on another really good thing too is the community college aspect. I think a lot of kids, when they leave high school, and maybe sometimes they take a year off, or maybe they try to go for college right afterward, they try to go immediately into that 4-year program, and they're like, no, I'm not going to go to community college. That's not for me. I want to go into the 4-year. And then they jump into it, and it's actually a lot. And I remember I took I didn't have a freshman year at Mass Art because I went to the community college and transferred in. And I think that was a huge benefit. I don't know what it is about community college, but I think it's a huge wake up call to
it's
reality.
like high school too.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's just you. No, I mean it is.
That's
it's
a good
like
way
the
of
same.
putting it.
You know, like cliques and friends hanging out, still playing Smash Bros. Like in the lobbies and shit. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it was just.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the Bunker Hill experience. But yeah, no, I would implore anyone, honestly, like, if you don't know what you want to do not go to school.
Yeah.
Like, save yourself money.
Mm-hmm.
Watch videos online if you want. Like, you know, like, I mean, who am I to speak about this? But it's like, if I had a kid, it's like, I would implore them for that.
Yeah,
I'm like, hey, don't think about the pressure. Don't just figure it out. Because you're going to be, like, in some form of debt. You're going to be, you know, you're going to feel like you wasted your time. It's like, and I have, like, friends, like, townie friends who, like, didn't go to school. They went into some sort of, like, vocational apprenticeship, or they worked in, like, an auto body shop. And guess what? It's like now they, like, run the shop. They know how to take apart a car and put it back together.
Very useful
and
skills.
And they don't have debt. It's like, yeah, like, I tell my friend, I'm like, wow, you're actually useful in a post-apocalypse. It's like, great. For me, it's like, do you have After Effects? I can't help you. Like, I just, like, I don't, like.
I went to a vocational school, and I have a friend here in town who went to be an electrician, and he got a house. And when I first kind of re-met him, because I knew him I kind of remembered him from high school, but I didn't, like, talk to him, and then we finally reconnected after college here. And I went over his house, and I'm like, oh, so is this is your parents' house? Are your parents out or something? He's like, no, this is mine. And I'm like, oh, you got like roommates or something? He's like, no, I bought this house. And I'm like, how old are you? He's like, oh, I'm 25. And I'm like, oh, me too.
Mother. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, my high school, I was in applied mechanics classes for like 2 years, and then my I think it was end of my junior year in high school, they were like, yeah, so if we should have told you this last year, but you could have become an apprentice like sophomore year and been made like $11 an hour starting, and then like up to like 20 by 2 years. And it's like, why are you telling me this now? I would have done that.
Yeah. So, Jack, looking through all of your amazing artwork that you have, like through your Instagram and your website,
it's kind of you.
How would you describe your art style? There's definitely a vibe to it, but I can't really pinpoint it down, and you could definitely point that out for us.
Yeah, stolen primarily.
Great art to steal.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, I really, because it's like any style you look at, any artist, like, from any, like, it doesn't matter. You're going to, like, see something, and you'll be like, oh, I love that, or I like that. I'm going to take how they draw the button on pants from this artist, and I'm going to take how they draw perspective from this artist, and I'm going to draw, you know, like, and you just pluck these things and you become a melting pot. And eventually it just kind of gets absorbed. But yeah, to be more specific about my style, I guess I embraced something that I guess the way I looked at it through college, where it's like, I like line over value in terms of what I can do. Which is like, does it work in black and white? Okay, then it can work with color. Like, flat colors would be great. Like, not saying there's no merit in, like, value or, like, what a painter can do or whatever. Because, like, I admire that because I can't do it. So I'm like, I'm not even gonna try to do it. Because it's like, I realize that, like, okay, pen and ink just works better for me. I mean, one time my friend used to say, it's like, man, I feel like I could cut myself on your art, which I thought was pretty funny. Because, I mean, I usually go for, like, sharper angles, but I've kind of softened up. And
yeah, there's definitely a bite.
That's a great way of putting
you
it.
can, yeah, where it's like, yeah, and like, the rude part just kind of, like, even though it's out of affection for my brother, and people think I mean, like, oh, I'm a bastard. But, like, no, it just, it somehow fits. And then Jack is also a very versatile and, you know, trickster, usurper kind of name from, like, Old English or whatever. And so it just kind of, I don't know, it just paints this certain picture. But I guess I like, I don't know, like, it really depends on the brush I'm using, because if you go back way down through my art, my dad got me these, like, gel pens, which, like, no matter how hard you press, they would be the same exact, like, you know, pressure and width. And I started to only draw with those. Like I haven't touched an eraser in like years. And what that forced me to do was to learn shading by using little lines, almost like a Mobius kind of style, or like a lot of like French and like heavy metal like artists use these like kind of, which I love. It has this sci-fi like cleanliness to it, and it's also like just it feels great. But it makes you such a perfectionist, and it hurts your hand after a while, and it makes you very OCD. But the thing I came to embrace with that was I would screw up all the time, but I didn't have an eraser, so I would just make it like, oh, that's a Band-Aid, that's a cigarette, that's a pouch. Eventually it was like, okay, now this is like an abstracted human being, which I love. Like a lot of my work, I love astronauts, deep sea divers, hazmat suits, like robots, like anything where it's like just complete greebling of the human form. Like to me, the hardest thing to draw is like a naked person.
Oh,
like
definitely.
I hate it.
Because if one line is off,
like,
you can just see it.
Yeah.
It's hard. So it's like I very much, it's just like any mistake I make, I just make it part of the style. And I guess to wrap up that point, like I guess just what I also love drawing is like really sincere emotions, whether it's like rage or like yearning or whatever. I just really love like faces and like brows, and yeah
there's always like this gritty, hard, like real emotion in your especially those close-ups of people's faces where it's like, that is a face, and then you're like, there's just some great caricature in there.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't like clean stuff, because that's another thing I'm kind of tired of seeing.
Almost rendered quality, like.
Yeah, like I think it's like, I remember reading somewhere where it's like, for like, especially drawing like women in comics, it's like, oh, they always have to be like perfect and like beautiful and like these, just gorgeous
Barbie
and
doll,
unrealistic body
stuff.
And it's like there's a stylized way where that works, but for me it's like, I think it's like when I first like saw like Tank Girl, I was like, oh my god, like this is awesome. Like, and I'm like, yeah, no, like it's like, yeah, like real people have acne and scarring and like hairy armpits and like stretch marks, and like they're just fucked up, and it's like, that's what I love. I just, the more fucked up it is, and surgical, I guess, I don't know, like, but yeah.
I gotta say too is also like all the like line work that you have, and looking through it, I'm trying to see myself, like, could I do something like that? And I see all of the lines that you put, and I'm like, I don't have the patience.
It looks like
that.
it takes hours. Hours.
So sometimes it can. Sometimes I can cheat a little bit, with like halftones or whatever. But yeah, like I have like two distinct styles depending on like, am I using the gel pen or am I using like this ink brush? And you can easily tell just looking through some of the pieces, like, yeah, like if it looks like unified, and it's the same width, it's like the gel pen. And if not, like that's the one that takes hours. The other one, that's me just like going off, and it's fun until it becomes work, because once you see that this could be something more than just a sketch, you're like, oh damn it, now I have to commit thought to it. The OCD takes
becomes
over,
a whole process. It's really cool that you can focus on a single utensil, like the gel pen as your starting point in a way. And it's also interesting when you mentioned just only using pen and never touching eraser. That's part of the industrial design curriculum, because you have to you're not allowed to use a pencil or eraser, because you have to premeditate your stroke. And it's a little bit different because industrial design is about clean lines and being very intentional, but you're not allowed to use an eraser, so you have to know exactly where you're going to go. So they have you like you motion out your stroke before you actually lay the pen down, and it's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah. That is interesting.
When they had us start, as Calder was saying, it's like, I remember our first assignments for drawing for designers, it was like, do like a few pages of just straight lines, and then eventually it was boxes and circles. But the whole thing was commitment to your line, and not having any, as our teacher would say, not having an like chicken scratch, just to follow through for every line.
Yeah, no hesitation.
Yeah. It makes sense, but wow. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts.
It's really cool.
And seeing a designer that draws every day is just incredible. Like, I'm working at an architecture firm now, but I was working at a product design firm earlier, and some of the designers I was working with, they would bang out a sketch like so quickly, and every line would be in perfect perspective, and I'd be like, that's incredible, and they'd be like, it's all right. And I don't sketch enough to be that on point and sharp, but it's just incredible to watch.
But isn't that what like CAD and your other applications are for?
Absolutely, yeah.
Such things.
But that's the fun part, I think, to me, about industrial design is it starts out as like a really shitty thumbnail sketch, and then you do a nicer sketch, and then a hand rendering, and then a digital rendering, and then a CAD model, and then it goes on and on and on until it's a physical product.
That's everything, but yeah. Crazy.
We stepped a little bit into your process, but can you explain like what you do to start a new piece?
So I was talking about this with someone the other day, because they were going into storyboarding and stuff, and they were like, all their advice that they've gotten was like, oh, just draw, just keep drawing. And I did that for most of my life, and I should have stretched more, because last year I started getting the hand issues that, come with, obviously that, like, level of work without taking breaks too, but that's on me. I've gotten better, but draw for the sake of drawing. I gotta really just spell this out here, like, for people out there, where it's like, and I hate the cliche of like work smarter, not harder, but it's so true. And it's like, if you're gonna draw, don't start drawing until you have an idea, and then if you don't know how to do something, like look at some base reference, block it out into shapes. Like there was a book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way that my dad like impeded on me, and like that was all. Oh, do you know it?
I have. I think I had it too at one point. My dad.
It's like everyone has that book. Yeah, and it's just like that helped, but I definitely still, as I was saying earlier, it's like every artist I looked at, I just kind of stole from. But to get back to the base thing, I've gotten better as I've gotten a little older on stuff where it's like I'll just really try to rough it out as quick as I can, and then I'll start going in. But whereas a lot of my pieces are, even when they're not like a whole comic, they're still pretty narrative driven, or it's like there's something being displayed, whether it's like just reading everything on the character, or like I'll have a lot of like one-time drawings that like are expressing like a joke or something. It's I need that first. It's like, so one piece of advice I would give to people is, if you want to be creative, to me, I think the worst place you can be is at your workstation, at your desk. Because what happens is you're going to sit there, you're going to draw, you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to hit a wall eventually, because you've thought about something, you've tried it as much as you can over and over and over and over, and you can't do it. And so now you're forcing it, and that's when you stop. You stop everything. There's like a line in Mad Men that is literally like what I'm talking about right now, and there's actually weirdly a lot of good design advice in that show, but tangent aside, the main character, he's just like, think about it, and then just stop, and you'll go off, and your subconscious will like take over, and it'll just hit you. Like, go for a walk, do the dishes, do something else. And once you've got that idea, once you're like burning to work, that's when you go to your desk and you crank it out, and that is a much better thing to do. Obviously, when you're on a deadline or a schedule, you'll have to learn how to do that in kind of like a microcosm. But really, I like every artist to a degree, you're a perfectionist, and that definitely bleeds into my work. But another quote I'll rip, because it makes me sound smarter, is the creators of Looney Tunes, when they were asked, like, were you trying to make kids laugh or adults laugh? And they were like, I'm paraphrasing, but they were like, oh, screw them, like, we were trying to make ourselves laugh, because we knew if we found it funny, then other people would find it funny. And you can apply that to anything, like make yourself cry, make yourself feel something, make yourself, like, you just know when like something could be better. So it's like, don't settle for your first draft, but contradictorily, on the other side of it, finished, not perfect, is also a good thing to embrace. True. If you really just have to keep moving, happy, not satisfied, just keep it going.
I had a friend that said, don't make it perfect, make it done. Don't make it, don't make it perfect, make it good.
Yeah.
In the industrial design world, it's called your MVP, minimally viable prototype. It's just, it will work.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that's the other thing. Yeah, you will develop shorthands and skills, and 90% of the time, even though you'll never be happy because you're always growing, and when you look at your older work, you cringe, but at the time, you were kind of like, oh, yeah, this looks kind of good.
Yeah.
Is that most people will look at it and be like, oh, this is great. And that's all it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to kind of trust that voice where you're like, all right, like, this was good enough, and you just move on. But the shorter version of this answer is, if you're asking, like, how do I start the drawing, I weirdly just start drawing, like, an ear, and then the whole, like, drawing comes out of that. I don't know, like, it's weird.
It's nice
like
to have a starting point. Ear. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have, like, one thing, like, okay, I know how to draw an ear, so let's start with that, and then...
I'll start there, or I'll start with, like, a line expressing the brow, and, you know, you just get that all out, and, yeah, I don't know. I probably should have started with that, but it's a case-to-case basis. It's so nebulous. It's so vague, as you must know at this point. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, though. My brother is the same way. My younger brother, he's 17, and he works exactly kind of the same way. He won't have, like, when you said that, I'm, like, thinking to myself at first, questioning, like, oh, no structure of where the skull is and where the eye placement would be. And then I think back to my brother, who he would do the same thing. He just like, no, just do it, and then work with it. And sometimes it becomes super abstract, or sometimes it would become more realistic. It would kind of whatever he needed it to be based off of that starting point, or wherever he came up with.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to advocate this to most people. Like, to most people, learn the anatomy before you start abstracting it. But one thing I have learned in my work, because my work is so stylized, is that really there's this, like, rule that I kind of follow where it's like 80%. Like, you just got to get the anatomy right 80%, because human beings are very forgiving, especially when something's stylized or a comic book, and they'll just give into it. Like, you don't need to, like, because honestly, if it's that realistic too, not to knock people who can draw photorealistic, if you can do that, like, you're incredible, but to me, in my world, that would just be boring. So, you know, you should spice it up. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
That being said, yes, learn your anatomy, kids. Like, don't listen to me. But that's just how I work.
I liked what you mentioned with the, like, that's my favorite thing about the human brain is, like, you can approach a problem and you struggle with it, and you say, fuck, I can't deal with this anymore. You go away.
Stop.
And then, your brain just keeps going as you do other things, and you come back, and all of a sudden you do it. And I've experienced that, like, that simply in video games where you just can't pass the level, and you give up, and then you come back like a week later and it's just first try, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
That was
and, like,
satisfying.
If you need an idea, like, I know I'm redundant and I go in loops, but I'm, like, telling you, like, just go for a walk and you're gonna see something. You're just, like, I don't know what it is, but you're gonna see something that's gonna trigger some weird childhood memory, and somehow that's going to, like, tumble into, that's it. And then you're going to pluck that, and you're just going to slap it on. You run to your desk, slap it on the screen, and there you go.
I also noticed is that, like, if you don't go on that walk, if you don't take that break, and you're just so stuck on, I need to get this idea done. Like, the other day, I started an art piece.
It's a luxury.
The other day, I started an art piece, and I kept thinking about it. And at one point, I was daydreaming about it, driving down the road. And I'm like thinking and I'm like, whoa, hey, you're trying to do your daily stuff here. You need to stop. It's getting in the way of other things like that you need to be doing. Especially as you get older, as you're an adult, you have other things scheduled, and if you let that one thing be on your thought process the whole time, nothing else is going to get done either.
It's also just good for your mental health to go for a walk or just step away from something that's challenging you. I mean, it's good that you're being challenged, but you'd be surprised how much progress you can make by not doing it.
You're worthless if you burn out.
You're
worthless if you burn out. So, you know.
All right. Now, Jack, what are you currently working on at the moment? Either artwork at home or maybe with your job?
Well, that's a great question. I recently just finished a gig, which was a wonderful experience in the world of storyboarding. It was for TV. It was for a show on Adult Swim, but I can't talk about it because NDA.
I think I know what show it is, but I won't.
Yeah, you probably do. Like, I mean, I don't know. Well, you might not. But Yeah, it's coming out later this year, and it was just a great experience, and I was super grateful for it. And it did this thing where it was like the first time I felt like a professional, because you like even though you're working, it's like, I don't know, it's like, when do you feel like you've made it? That's up to every individual artist, and for me it was like, okay, to work at this level on something like this, with fellow human beings who are also like, a bit of imposter syndrome, faking it till they make it, and they're all there and they're continuing, and you see the cracks, and you see like how strange a miracle it is that like things even get made, because it's like there's just so many variables where it's like, it's, I don't know, but anyway, so that was a great experience, but I finished that, and now I'm open to work. I'm freelancing, trying to take on commissions and just job hunting, but in the meantime, this is actually great to branch off of what you were just talking about, John, is like, stuff never ends. It's like, I'm going to have to do work that's going to pay the bills, of course, and right now I'm able-bodied and I could do that. But there's also passions and dreams, and I know that like there's constantly going to be jobs I'm going to take to pay said bills, but the obligations never end. It's like, you have medical things, you get married, you have kids, you go through life. That window of free time is going to get smaller and smaller. I've seen it happen in real time.
Yeah.
I know it, like, I'm just aware of it.
It's scary.
I say none of this to demoralize people, but I'm just brutally honest here. You got to think of ways where, and this is something I started to do at the tail end of that gig, where I was like, okay, even though I'm really working a lot and using my being milked for my creative brain and my hand, I need to figure out a way, like maybe even like just an hour a day, to work a little bit on something. So that's what I want to keep doing going forward. At the moment, I'm kind of sampling the platter. I'm trying to get into a little bit of like game design and like 2D like animation and stuff like that, and I'm talking to a friend about like making a game just to do it, because it's like, okay, I've like, and again, like I clearly haven't, but like in my brain it's like, well, I've conquered storyboarding for TV, this one gig, so that's over and done with. So let me try something else, but that's not actually what it is. Obviously, I love that. I think directing is ultimately what I want to do, work on stuff like that. But like I said, backwards compatible. Storyboarding is always going to be there. I really want to make comics. There's comics I've always wanted to make. But you do realize you are a one-person show at the end of the day, and your time is precious depending on what you want to work on. So I've kind of found like the shorter span something is, like the faster you can get it out, the better it is. But at that same time, yeah, I don't really have a concrete answer for you. I'm kind of floating between things that obviously would make my portfolio better, or things that would be a risk. And, I'm, young enough to take those risks, but really what I'm working on is mastering somehow. If I can do that, I think I just win life a little bit. But if I can just master how to work on something while always working or going to have obligations, having a side and if everyone could try to do it, it's like, that's,
I think it's a necessity.
That's going to be the hardest thing. Yes, absolutely.
And you definitely, you touching on that, like I've noticed it recently within my time, and it also, we all are, especially as designers and artists, we all have this thing where we have like 10 things that we want to do, 10 dreams or goals.
Oh yeah.
And I think as we get
manic.
Yeah. And as we get and as we get older and we get more busy, it's the challenging thing, and this is the thing that's been getting me recently, is which thing do you pick, Yeah. And it's like, and then once you pick it, is that the right thing? Or because there's been times where I'll start something like, okay, I think this is the thing I need to focus on, and then I'll start it, and then all of a sudden be like, crap, that wasn't the thing, it was this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of want to do like a what do you call it, like benefit analysis or something, where it's like, okay, if I have this side gig, what can it do for me?
And then there's times where it's overthinking it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sometimes the side thing is supposed to be something you're incredibly passionate about, and we've had a few people on here that their side thing became their main because they were so passionate about it.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have 1,000 different ideas for companies or products or jewelry or whatever. but I never really devote enough time to it. And if you really care about something, at the end of the day, you will make time for it, or on the weekends or in the morning. Like, if you really want to have that side gig, you'll make time for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you can quell your expectations as well, where it's like, you know, like beginning of college, I was like, oh, I have this like 100-page graphic novel I want to do. Now I'm like, I want to try to boil this down to 8 pages.
There you go.
And if I can do
that,
no, seriously. Yeah. Because here's the thing. Yeah, if you can standards. Make like 5 of those 8-page comics, you are making a tangible thing that people can actually see. Oh, you can actually follow through on something. So you're not just demoralizing yourself every day where it's not finished, and you get practice in. And look at that, you've already just expanded your portfolio, and it's just
everything starts
quell
small.
It down.
It's good to have a passion project, or like be really ambitious, but it has to be tangible. It has to be you have to be able to accomplish it. And I write a list out every day, and oftentimes there's like 15 things on there, and I'm like, wait, I need to write a new list because I can't do all those 15 things. And you have to be realistic.
Unless you're getting paid for like one, like if you can tailor something into it, because I'm like, I want to do a music video, I want to do a music video game, I want to do a comic, movie, whatever. It's just like, don't do this on your own time. Do the thing you can do on your own time that isn't gonna like demolish you.
I have this problem too, and I think all this talk also is so recent within my life, which is really funny. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and one thing I've noticed and discovered is I'll have nothing is like hobby work for me. It always turns into some giant ass project, and with like with like huge ambitions, and then it doesn't happen because you blow it up so big. So now I've started creating safety nets for that ambition, because I realize it for myself. Oh, wow. I'm like, okay, that thing that you wanted to do, it may not blow up that big. So what you should do is maybe do this. And then if that doesn't work, at least you have this. And if that doesn't work, at the very minimum, at least you have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, starting small.
That's the key.
Because you have a pretty big following on Instagram, Jack. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. I cheated, pretty much. I would, like, from a chunk of... well, obviously, it's like, look, I worked... It's that thing where it's like, you know, I'm always very, very flattered when people say, it's like, oh, he's so talented, oh my god. And it's just like, it's very, very kind, and I've just insulted a lot of people. Why did I do that? But as you both know, it's a skill perfected. I spec'd all my time into this thing. I could have been working out, I could have been a doctor, I could have been, you know, I could have had class, could have been somebody, but like, it's like, no, I just spec'd everything into this. It's just skill. And so obviously I did earn it, and that, going back to the imposter syndrome, when I got that gig, it's because I impressed the right person. That wasn't a job I was like hunting for. Like, I was sending stuff out, but like it just found me immediately. And the whole time I was like, I feel like I didn't do this right, because I have friends struggling, like sending their shit out. But it's like, no, you did earn it, because you did enough to get on that person's radar, and they liked what you were doing, because you were just doing your own thing. So that's one thing I would encourage people to say, where it's like, you know, if you really love what you're doing, keep at it, and don't feel like you have to completely change what you're doing, but, you know, look at it critically. But the following basically is, it was a lot of that, where it's like, I think a lot of people I'm eternally grateful for like my work, but I also, when I said I cheated, is you can pay for ads on Instagram, and I put some money aside I would ride the zeitgeist. Actually, that's my big tip. Ride the zeitgeist.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The zeitgeist meaning what is popular right now.
Oh,
yeah. What is in the know. So it's like, when like, because I love so many like pop culture things and whatever, and I have a very broad spectrum of interests, and you know, it's like new Metroid comes out, bam, I draw Samus for the 8 millionth time.
Your Batman post I just saw?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was, like, that was one of those where it's like, oh, I could have spent more time on this, but I sent it off, because it's like, it doesn't really matter, because it's like, you just do something. I know, I sound like I'm taking the soul out of it, but it's like, the algorithm.
I think it's brilliant, because you're taking a little seed that's in people's heads, like, oh, they heard about the new Batman movie, or they went and saw the new Batman movie. Yeah. and then you're bringing it into another context, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. I just saw that movie, and now I see someone's illustration.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it cheating either. I'd call it strategic.
Definitely just brilliance. Like,
yeah. I mean, I am occasionally, throwing money at the thing to boost it, obviously, which is, that's a position that not everyone is in, but it's like, that's money I save up from a paycheck or whatever to throw into it. Just like a little bit, and I know I hate supporting Zuckerberg and all that other crap, but like, I don't know, Instagram's been good to me, so I gotta do it, but you just ride that zeitgeist, use a post for practice. Sometimes it pays off. Sometimes it's kind of demoralizing because you'll draw a personal thing and that'll get like 1/16 of the attention that like, hey, I drew something that was more popular or, something even slightly horny or whatever. And like, if you really want to racket it, if I really wanted to get into it, I've discussed this with a lot of people. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Like I don't want to have to draw. Like, I don't want to have to change my work to appease people. I just want to draw what I want to draw and bring them on. But people who do draw, like, go even further, who do draw, like, the more horny stuff, whatever, it's like, God bless, because it's like, damn it, you're so much smarter than me. Because it always works. And, like, it's just...
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's also appealing
the internet has done.
In people's heads.
Yeah. Also... I guess the last note on this is that I believe people like electricity take the path of least resistance, and especially with TikTok and every application, like I said, I think earlier, that has become TikTok, is if it's a video, if it grabs their attention in like a nanosecond, and if it just if it's just that thing,
it has to be consumable.
They just got out of Batman. Yeah, like it's what it is.
People don't have, especially on cell phones and anything like that, their attention span isn't very long. It's like, okay, I've lost interest, what's next? If it's really quick and digestible, then they're going to say, oh, this was fun, and it was satisfying, it was quick and easy, and I enjoyed that. And to your point about, getting success without feeling like you've done much to get it, that was what got how I got my new job. Is I was called up by a kind of a mentor that I'd met at Mass Art, and they're like, do you want a job? And I'm like, I didn't apply, but I guess. And it was a little bit of guilt in there because I have friends that are struggling to get jobs, and I have to remember that, he saw the skills that I had and thought they were worthy of investing in. So that's why I'm where I'm at. And speaking of TikTok, there's a video I think I saw on like Instagram Reels or something. And it's about Picasso being at a restaurant, and some woman approaches him and asks him to draw. And then he asks for money, and she's like, why would you ask for money? And he's like, because I spent 45 years learning how to be this good. And people have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
Now, Jack, do you have any hobbies or interests outside of besides all the drawing that you're obviously doing, getting better all the time?
Yeah.
Do you, what are some other things you do in your daily life?
Well, it's funny because it makes you feel like you don't do much else, but I mean, there were other things I have done over the years. There's always fleeting interests where it's like the same thing. It's like, oh man, I really want to learn this, or I want to go do that, or whatever. But it's like pretty much everything I do is a case of one hand washing the other, where it's like, if I'm not drawing, I'm probably working on writing in terms of like the comic or the storyboard or whatever. And if I'm not doing that, if I want to get inspired, I'm probably studying films or reading comics or books. Like pretty much all my interests are like in this same umbrella, and I am just scattered around all of it, consuming it, from like music to video games to like whatever. So yeah, it's like, it's not like I can't say it's like, oh no, I don't have other hobbies, but it's like I just pretty much am this.
No, they relate.
I don't know, like, yeah, they're related. It's like, I mean, on other fronts, there's other things I do want to do.
Well, I think people do that naturally, subconsciously in their daily life. Like I tell my friends all the time and other people, like, I think a big part of my work is the love of narrative and storytelling. And I've noticed that even in the things that I watch on YouTube that I'm just mindlessly watching on my off time, it's someone breaking down some movie or some kind of story clip of something, or you know, video essays.
Video essays.
Essays. I'm obsessed with those. So it's I think everyone kind of does something in their daily life that you can't help it. It's related.
Yeah, no, it's all connected, and yeah. That's about it.
So you've mentioned this a few times, but where can we find more of your work?
Really, Instagram is my main hub, and off my website. It's funny because it's all just the same thing. It's like my Vimeo, you've seen everything on my Vimeo because it's on my Instagram. Mm-hmm. My website, you've seen everything on my website because it's on my Instagram. And yeah, I mean, I guess you will see some of my DNA on the show that premieres later this year. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
So that's all at Rudejackart?
I'm Rudejackart on everything.
Excellent.
Yeah, like I'm pretty easy to find.
Now, what does the future look like for you, Jack? What are you trying to take on?
Malleable.
Yep.
Malleable at the moment. So yeah, it's kind of back to what I was saying. It's like I want to kind of sample the platter right now, which is why it's like I have. Like, again, like, it's like there's some things you back burner, some things you don't, but it's like I'm tentatively working on a game with a friend of mine. With another friend of mine, I'm helping him work on a film where I'm trying my hand at acting in it. So we'll see how that goes.
Got the accents down.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, I know, and then the bastard was like, "Oh no, you're just playing like a guy just like you," and I was like, "Oh, you piece of shit!" Like, now I'm gonna overthink the hell out of this. But yeah, no, I want to sample the platter. You know, I don't want to be shoehorned to one thing.
Right.
You know, whether it's storyboarding, comics, music videos, whatever. It's like I have like a foot in the door of like each, and it's really just about which of those is going to pull the trigger and which of those is going to pay the bills. And then which of those is going to become more of the obligation, and we'll see.
Many eggs, many baskets.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's good to be a generalist. What advice would you have for anyone in a similar, maybe not path? Everyone has their own unique trajectory, but anyone in a similar mentality, what advice might you have?
Man, if you like opened the podcast just with this question, it could have been the whole podcast. Like,
you're right.
Just rant forever. This is the most vague question ever. You're gonna go over, but anyway. What advice? I mean, I think I said a little bit of it earlier, and I scattered throughout. But yeah, I mean, I've actually given quite a bit of advice during this whole thing. But yeah, no one's gonna do it for you. Like, no one's gonna do it for you. Like, if you're in a position where you want to go to college, you want to go to art school, it is worth it for the networking, and we are social creatures. And I can't speak for someone who wanted to do this and then didn't go, because I can't really imagine what that's like, learning everything off of YouTube, even though you totally could. But you are going to have to think for yourself critically at some point. In some cases, breaking the rules might be more beneficial to you in standing out. If you're just trying to get a lot of followers, ride the zeitgeist, make something really easy to see. If you get stuck, leave your desk, let it hit you somewhere else, and finish not perfect. Yeah, I'm just rallying off.
I mean, they're all excellent points.
Yeah. No, it's just, you just got to keep at it. And, because someone told me to mention this, but if you're going into storytelling, really pay attention to some, like when you're studying storytelling, look at how someone tells the story. Really study that, because that's something where it's like, there's like clean and tried and true ways, but you should be looking at like why you responded to something. And remember that writing is rewriting, and your first idea is your least original, because, no, it is, because it's like, if I say like, oh, we're going to make a horror film, your brain is going to go through every horror movie monster, whatever you've ever thought of. And it's like, break that down. Reinvent it. Like, make it a little more original. Make it more personal. Because everyone wants to do Jaws in X setting. Like, try to think of a new way to approach that. Like, I'm just going into, like, fucking advice rambling. But, you know, your first idea is your least original. Writing is rewriting. Yeah. But,
all right, Jack.
Yeah,
that's
all I got.
Yeah, it's been awesome to have you on here. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you both so very much.
Yes.
It's great that you provide this.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, we're hoping to reach people that can truly take some value out of these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can reach us on our Instagram at bad_media_ and our email, bad.bostonmedia@gmail.com.
You are listening to the Boston Artists and Designers Podcast, created to provide insight to all kinds of creative minds by sharing the work and experiences of our peers and discussing what inspires and drives them. The goal is to create a platform for collaboration, networking, discussion, and education. B.A.D Podcast is created and hosted by Calder McKay and John Chevrette. Music by Tom Abbott. John and I are just getting started and hope to get better over time and with your feedback. Thanks again for listening.